Welcome back to Enshrouded, everyone. Today I'm going to build a very cozy forest cottage in Blackmire Forest. And we are right below the treetop Vuka settlement here on the map. And I've picked this location because it's really cozy and kind of tucked away in the trees, which is the feel I'm going for this build. We still have a little bit of a view, and I just really love this spot. So with that said, this entire build will take place in a level 1 flame altar, and it will be combining my favorite techniques and favorite builds from this channel to create one ultimate super cozy build for the forest. I'll be using a lot of my favorite designs for Hobbit holes and combining them into one to create a Hobbit hole on the bottom of this build, and then above the Hobbit hole I'm going to create a really cozy cottage and then build a little tree next to it that might have a little swing hanging from it or a little balcony that we could climb up to. So it should be a really fun build. It will be a slightly longer video, but I hope you enjoy, and without further ado, sit back, get cozy, and let's get building. I'll start by walking you through the foundation and floor plan for this build. And I know this might seem like a lot to take in at first because I have done some planning, but I think in the long run this will be a bit easier to understand if I just walk you through what I have here in detail, rather than showing you how to place it all block by block on camera, which will take a lot more time. So starting with the floor, I have the ceiling blueprints, which are 8 blocks by 8 blocks, and I'm building it out of the conifer wood block. And this front section of the Hobbit hole is basically 4 of these blueprints wide by 2 blueprints deep. And then directly behind it and in the center is where I have my flame altar placed. And this section is now 6 of these blueprints wide because it juts out by an extra blueprint on this side as well as this side. And then the right side here is 3 of these blueprints deep, and the left side is only 2 blueprints deep, and then it juts in by 1 blueprint. So this back section is 5 blueprints wide, leaving this corner fully open for a staircase that will connect the Hobbit hole with the cottage right above it, rather than closing it off like I did with this corner. And then entirely around the back side of the Hobbit hole here, I've just wrapped it around with the wide wall blueprints using the flintstone block here, which I think just matches the forest greens really nicely. That'll be a nice foundation block for the walls of the Hobbit hole. And then in the front section here, I've just used the 4 block tall wall blueprint, again with the flintstone, to basically build some walls across here. And then you'll notice in this one, I've left a 4 block wide opening directly in between these 2 floor blueprints here. And that'll be for a little doorway into the tree. And now for the front of the Hobbit hole here. Let me go into first person to better explain this. It's done with the conifer wood block and goes up by 4 blocks, up and over by 2, up and over by 2, up and over by 3, and then up and over by 18 blocks, and then down and over by 2, down and over by 1, down and over by 2, and then down by 4. So that's the outline for the front wall here. Directly in the middle, I have my round door, which is just 6 blocks by 6 blocks, and then over by 3 blocks and up by 2 blocks on each side is where I have my 3 by 3 window openings for the larger round windows. And then on the left side, over by 2 blocks, I have my smaller round window here. So there's the front plan there, and I think the next step is to actually further develop the front of the Hobbit hole here. And to start with that, I'm going to first take my ceiling blueprint out of the Vuka temple stones, and then with snapping turned off, I'm going to back it up to where it's just sticking out of the front by 2 blocks. So we're going to place it right there and then turn snapping on and continue those all the way across the front of the Hobbit hole here for a little patio foundation area that kind of sticks out. And now I'm going to take my tarred shingle roof block. You can also use the stone shingle roof block or a combination of the two that I'll show you in a minute. But I'm going to take this block and continue all around the entire face of this Hobbit hole with the roof blocks. And if you don't like the little textures that happen, like that right there, we can just go into the settings and then display, and scroll down where it says voxel detail models. And we can just turn those off for now, and that'll just make it a bit easier to see what you're doing when placing these. But you can see when placing them, it just rounds out the corners around the doors, or the door and the windows here, which just looks super nice. And then right in between the door and these larger windows here, so this empty space right here is actually going to be for some columns here. I'm going to do that actually out of the palm wood block for now. Let's turn snapping off and just sit one down there and another one directly on top of it. Same thing right over here. One down there and one on top of it, just to allow for some solid blocks to place some vines on later and give the front a little bit of texture. So I'm going to finish and continue all the way around with the roof blocks and then get back with you shortly. All right, there we go. So I now have the roof blocks covering the front of the Hobbit hole. And like I mentioned earlier, you can use a combination of the stone shingle and the tarred shingle. So this entire section around the door here and around these larger windows are done with the tarred shingle. And then you can see this side sections on the very outer edges is done with the stone shingle roof block. And what that does is it just creates this really cool texture, this little line here that kind of outlines these windows. And you can get fancy with that, do some designs or do whatever roof blocks you want for the front of the Hobbit hole. But it just makes everything look really soft and rounds it all out really nicely. So now I'm going to go back to my single block, and with the conifer wood block, I am going to outline just at the very edge of the front of the Hobbit hole here. That looks quite nice. And now one extra step that makes it look really cool. First of all, we can go and turn our voxel details on now that we're done at creating the roof sections. You can see here these two roof pieces still create some texture, so I'm actually going to fix that by, let's see here, sometimes you might have to pick up the door here by just putting an extra block there. That gets rid of both of those, and then we can place our door back just like so. Perfect. So now with the front done, something I really like to do is take these support struts here. They're very large, but you can craft them at the workbench, and this is going to be a fun design here. We're going to basically do a free rotation, flip them all the way upside down. I think that's right there. Yep. Going to first person here so it's easier to see. And with snapping turned on, I want to snap them right in front of these columns. Just like that. I think that just looks super cool. Rather than using blocks for the columns, just add some more three-dimensionality and some texture. And then for one last thing, what we can do is every now and then, either with the palm wood block or conifer wood block, we could destroy a roof block and replace it with a different block. And that will allow us to take the vines tool, and we could just add a few vines here. So let me just go to the small section here. There we go. Just allows us to add some of those, and you can see on the columns here behind these support pillars, we can actually add a few vines sticking out because we used a different block. You can't place vines on roof blocks, unfortunately, at least not at the time of this video, but that'll just add for some nice texture to the front of our little house there. Now I'm going to work on the roof of the Hobbit hole here. And I'm going to use the tarred shingle roof block and basically outline the entire top edge of this front. And for this middle section, we can actually use the blueprints rather than placing this all block by block. So I can use the large blueprint here for the roof and just kind of pull that there and snap it all the way back here to the flame altar. So just two of these blueprints back, and then I'll continue the rest of this pretty much block by block. Aside from using these larger blueprints on the edges, I could do another one right over here. It looks like, let's see, let's back that in there and then just continue it to the edge. Perfect. All right, and what this will do, because it's going to be covered with terrain anyway, is that it'll just make for a really nicely rounded and smooth interior edge to the roof. You can see that that just kind of adds an angle and curves it a little bit versus just using a different block like the conifer wood block, which will just give this much harsher stepped edge here to the inside of the roof. So I'm just going to continue this all the way back on both of these sides and then get back with you when that's finished. All right, there we go. I now have the front section covered here. And then one last thing is right above this 4-block wide opening for the doorway, I'm going to make it 5 blocks tall instead of just 4 blocks tall for the roof. Just because the standard doors in Enshrouded are 5 blocks tall gives a little bit more headroom here. So on the second row here, I'm just going to come out a little bit farther with the shingle roof blocks, just like that, just to kind of add a little bump out over the door there. And I just love how everything kind of becomes rounded within the Hobbit hole here. It just really accentuates that feel of the rounded Hobbit hole. We'll use this technique in the hallways as well to kind of make rounded hallways and everything. So with that, I think I will get started doing the roof over the rest of the section here. And I'm debating doing the same roof as what I have here, but because the roof of this section is actually going to be the floor of the cottage above, at least a section of it here, I'm going to do this roof out of the conifer wood block instead, which I just think will look much nicer as a floor block for the cottage, rather than doing it out of the roof block. But I think they'll look fine. There will also be a divider wall here and everything to close that gap, so that should all work out okay. Let me finish this off, and then I should also probably get some light in here so that you guys can see what I'm doing in the future, because it'll start getting dark in here very quickly here soon. So there we go. There's my conifer wood block. I think that transition looks just fine from the conifer wood to the roof block. I even like how the beams in the roof block from the textures there match up with the grid of the conifer block. And actually, the flame altar is providing some decent light in here. That is not bad at all. So yeah, now I'm going to work on some divider walls and kind of further developing the interior of the Hobbit hole. And I'll start by filling in these gaps up here with the tarred shingle roof block. I'm just going to come all the way across with it, just like so, on both sides. And there we go. That looks a little nicer. And now I'm going to continue both of those walls in and actually create the openings for 2 little hallways, similar to some of the other Hobbit holes that I've done, that will divide this front section to the back section. And to do that, I'm going to take my tarred shingle roof block and right from the flame altar, starting on the center of the flame altar, and we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then right outside of that 4th block, right here, I believe. Actually, right here, because I want to be in line with this wall right here. I'm going to continue a pillar all the way up to the roof there. So let me just put one there, and then I think right there we'll meet up. Yep, that looks good. And same thing on the other side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the outer block here, continuing a pillar all the way up to the roof. Because this flame altar is actually going to be its own little room. It's going to have some walls going around the back of it, which will be really nice. It'll be kind of like a little fire pit to sit around as part of the living room, because I usually like to find ways for my flame altars to feel like they fit in the space nicely, rather than sticking out or looking like they're not really in there well. So with that, I'm going to now continue the tops of these all the way over. And I want to leave a, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. A 6-block wide opening there. And continue filling this entire section in. And same thing on the other side. Now it seems a little complicated right now because this is all being placed block by block. And I should actually turn my voxel details off again so it's not quite as confusing for you guys. Yeah, fill this in just like that. And same thing on the other side. So now we have 6 blocks wide, and I want it to be 5 blocks tall. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which means we can fill in this very top row here. And this will essentially be the opening for a little rounded hallway that will continue into the back of the Hobbit hole. And to do that, I'm going to take these round wooden window frame pieces, and rather than sitting them flush with the surface, I'm going to use Q and the scroll wheel to sit them down in by 8 clicks. So that's up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then place it. And that's going to be far enough down to where we have this flat floor right here. But as we walk through it, I don't bang my head or glitch into it. We have a really smooth transition there, which is perfect. And then because we use the roof block, it kind of rounds the edges here and the corners, making it look a little bit nicer. So I'm going to do that same exact thing to this side. And there we go. We now have our openings complete that will lead into 2 hallways going back. I think that looks really nice. And now I'm just going to continue a wall around the flame altar here. I'm just going to use the half-timbered block for this. You can use whatever blocks you'd like for the interior. And I may even change what blocks I use depending on how it looks when everything's finished. So that just outlines the flame altar nicely. There's the little spot where we spawn into the build. I could put some little shelves and other things around it and kind of deck out that area a little more. But this is starting to look really nice as kind of the divided section where we'll have a little kitchen over here. We'll have a little living, dining area in this section with the door going into the tree. And then a hallway that goes back here, probably into a bedroom. And then everything will kind of meet up with hallways to this back corner where there will be a staircase continuing into the cottage right above. So I'm just going to continue blocking out some walls here, and then once I'm finished with that, I will walk you through everything that I did and show you where I ended up placing the walls. But I don't really have a plan for this just yet, so I'm just going to place some stuff and see how it ends up looking. Alright, I've spent a little bit of time building some more walls and dividing the rooms, and here's what I have so far. I will obviously add more detail once I do the interior decoration, but on the right side here, if we walk in, this will be the larger master bedroom. And then to the left, we have a little hallway right behind the flame altar that connects these 2 larger hallways. So here's the left hallway that comes in. And then straight through here, we have a smaller room, which will probably become just a smaller bedroom. And then all the way in the back here, we will be able to turn left and have the staircase that goes up. And then this will actually be a dividing wall. I don't exactly know where I want to place the wall just yet, but it will divide a little section right back here that will become the bathroom right off of this master bedroom. So that's kind of how I've done the dividing of the rooms right now. This wall right here is just basically placed on the very edge of this floor blueprint here. That's where that back wall is. This wall here is just a continuation of the previous panel that we placed around the flame altar. And then as you can see, just around the door openings, I've just used the roof block to again round all of them and make it look really nice. So I'm really happy with this layout for the time being. And now I'm going to do the stairs in the corner here. So starting with the refined stone block, which is what I'm going to use for these lower stairs, at least for now. I'm going to just use a little ceiling blueprint to snap a blueprint just like that. And then I'm going to, with snapping turned off, just snap some stairs down there like so. And then another row of them, just like that. That'll work. And then I'll just take my little cube here and right above this first step. So on this block, starting 1 away from the wall, I'm just going to block out a little opening for my stairs here. So something like this. And then I can just finish out the little section here. Let's see. Let's take that out right there. Take this out. And there we go. That now brings me up to where the little cottage will be built on top of the Hobbit hole. And another thing, you'll notice these 2 little chains poking through the top. Obviously, there will actually be terrain covering those, but those are from the chandeliers here. I've just gone ahead and raised them up into the roof there to allow for some more headroom here. walking in the halls, and this is just temporary lighting. That might not be the final locations of them, but I'm pretty happy with it so far. So with that, I think the next thing I'll do is actually start working on outlining the first level, or I guess technically second level, of what will be the little house and cottage up here. And to do that, I'm going to take my column blueprint, and I'm actually going to use the Vuka temple stones. We'll see how this looks. It may not quite be the look I'm going for, but I'm going to snap one in each corner. Let's go ahead and snap one there, and then 2 floor blueprints over. So there's 1, 2. I'm going to snap it in this corner, and then 1 blueprint back in that corner, and then 1, 2 over. I'm going to snap one there, and then another one right here. So that right there is going to be the floor outline for the little cottage. I'm going to have the front entrance for the cottage be right here, and it'll kind of be like a little L shape. I might have a little kitchen over here, and it will have a little loft, and then maybe even a little deck that starts on the second level that kind of goes out there. So it's a pretty small layout, but we have plenty of room in the Hobbit hole below, so I don't really need a very big house. But with that, I am now going to do the walls of the first floor here. I'm going to take my wide wall blueprint, and then with the rough flintstone, with snapping turned off, I'm just going to kind of back it in, just like so. Can rotate it, and let's see, right on the edge here. Not right there, but just one more over. Let's go ahead with that. And like that. So basically setting it back by 1 block rather than being flush with these columns. That'll just give the walls some more texture for the foundation here. And terrain will actually be coming up part way on this foundation. So I'm not really going to worry about it too much because, yeah, this will probably have at least 4 blocks of terrain on it to where the terrain comes up to about this line right here on the foundation covering the entire Hobbit hole. So that's the reason we're doing the first level out of stone, just because it'll make a little more sense. And there we go. This will be the interior. As you can see, little stairs going down into the Hobbit hole, coming up, and we can just give ourselves a little point of entry out front here. I'm just going to do 4 blocks wide by 5 blocks tall. And this will be the front door. I'll do a little staircase kind of heading down in the yard out front. But with that now finished, we can now start covering this entire Hobbit hole with terrain. So starting with my large terrain blueprint, the box blueprint, and just using dirt for now, I am going to basically just fill in all over the top here and smoothing down the sides. And sometimes we can use this big one. For the sides here, I'll have to use the cube of terrain. So for example, I can kind of just use the cube going this way. And then to fill in these little sections, I will often have to use the single block of terrain. Basically just making sure that at least 2 blocks worth of terrain is covering the entire top and sides of the Hobbit hole here. And on these steeper sides here, we can kind of do a smoother blend down into the ground. And I also forgot to mention that I will also probably be putting some windows inside the rooms here. So maybe like, I don't know, that's about centered, maybe 2 blocks down from the top. I'll do a window there, and maybe a little window over here. Let's do one right there. And we can kind of incorporate those into the terrain just to have some extra natural light points coming into the Hobbit holes. So let me do all of the terrain. It's pretty self-explanatory, so I'll mostly be skipping ahead for this. But yeah, just take your time and go over the entire thing with maybe a mix of dirt, some foliage maybe, some moss, flower soil. You can use whatever you want to make it look really nice. And even using the farm soil block in order to match the brown texture of the ground if you're doing this in Revelwood or Blackmire in certain places. Alright, I've pretty much covered the entire thing with terrain now, and it is starting to look super nice. I absolutely love how the little bits of foliage kind of hang down in front of the Hobbit hole. And I'm also going to mention that I left this area open right outside this little doorway, since this will be the base of the large tree that'll come up over here. But aside from that, everything is covered, and I just love how it all blends and looks super nice. There's still a few little tweaks to do and a little bit of blending to do, but overall I really like it. You can see that's kind of what I did around the windows there, just to kind of hide them but make them look nice, get some natural lighting into the Hobbit hole. And then I also came up along the foundation with a little bit of foliage with the vines and some of the pink roses here, which just looks really nice. And I'll cut windows and do some detail on the foundation portion a little bit later, but for now I'm going to start working on the house a bit more here. And you can see right off the bat that I have officially put the stairs where I wanted them to go. So the angled stairs coming up right here, I've just added some railings to them, made them look a little bit nicer. And same thing with the stairs right above them, directly above those lower stairs that will go to the second floor of the cottage here. So that's what I'll work on now, is doing the second floor. And the first step for that is to actually destroy one block lower of the entire perimeter of the top of this foundation, because I want the floor to sit there and I don't want the stone to show through in the floor. So a quick way to do that, I'll just take my cube and we can just go all the way around and eliminate one block of the foundation. Aside from these outer pillars, so these outer pillars here, I'll basically just eliminate the blocks on the insides like that, but not these blocks on the very outsides. And there we go. Now that that is finished, I'm going to make the floor. And the second floor here, I thought would be cool to do out of the palm wood block. I just think it looks really nice. I kind of like the little crisscross pattern in it. So I'm just going to have snapping on and basically go around the outline of the house here. And this is why I wanted to just cut down that foundation wall by one block so that it's not poking through the floor. And then around the stairs here, we can just get a little bit finer, either using the smaller blueprint, or in this case, honestly, I'm just going to place it block by block because it's pretty much completed with the other blueprints. And now that the floor is done, I just put a little railing around the stairs up here. And then one more step is to destroy another block right around the outside of this floor so that it's even with the wall below it. And again, not touching these pillars here with the Vuka temple stones, just the floor blocks in between them here. And I get that I could have just snapped the blueprints in by one block, but I often like to kind of directly snap the blueprints on top of each other, just so I can kind of use a blueprint to highlight them to know where to snap certain things. And then I like to come in after the fact and destroy the blocks that I don't need. So this is just my method. You obviously can do it however you'd like, but this is what works for me. So I'm going to go around the entire perimeter here and just destroy the outer block. And with that, I'm now going to do the walls of the second floor here out of the conifer wood block. So snapping them to the very outside rather than to the kind of edge of the floor here, because it'll overlap the bottom level by one block, as you can see down here. That's how that'll look, which is a really nice look. And then directly in the middle of these two blueprints, I'm going to take my little cube here and just block out a doorway, because this will go out onto a deck, hopefully. Again, I don't have a super solid plan for this build, but I have a few things in mind, and I think a door here onto a deck will look nice, but that may change later on. So I'll just continue the walls here, making sure they're just snapped together along the exterior here. Something like that. Let's rotate that one and bring it across. And I also want to mention, I'm not going to do them around this front portion, just this back end. So something like that. And then I'm leaving this front portion open because this is actually just going to be a roof that begins kind of right from this level, and it's going to be a really steep roof that blends into a shallower roof that will go on top of this section, just to add some interesting roof lines and just make it really cozy and fun there. Now this might seem a little weird at first, but around the entire perimeter, just below where this wall meets the foundation, I'm actually going to take my railing pieces, the wooden fences, and then just pop them up by 1 block and snap those in around the entire perimeter here. And I've actually never done this on a build before, but if you step back here, I think it just looks really cool. Adds a little bit of fun texture, and it actually is the same color as this conifer wood block. So it just kind of blends it into the foundation nicely. Looks like it's a little more supported. And heck, I could even take some roof blocks maybe and build myself a little support beams kind of coming out to hold the wall. Just add some fun texture and add all of that detail, especially later on. But yeah, I'm gonna try that for this build and see if I like it or not. So here we go. I've just gone around the entire build with the fences there, except for underneath the doorway here. And I think that'll actually look really nice when everything is finished. So now it is time to create the roof profiles. I'm going to do one for the steep roof up front here, and then one on the side here for a slightly shallower roof that will go all the way across this back section, and then the steeper roof will meet up with that shallower roof somewhere in the middle right here. All right, I now have my roof profiles finished. Here's the steeper one for the front, and then the shallower one for the side. And let me go over exact block placement for these profiles here. Starting with the steeper front profile here, if I go into first person and then the single block, it is a total of 20 blocks tall from the floor there. So 20 blocks up to this tallest point. And then it comes down by 4 blocks, over by 1, down by 4, over by 1, down by 3, over by 1, down by 3. And then jumping down here, over by 1, down by 2, and then 1, 1, 1, and then over by 2. So that's the taller profile. That just mirrors on this side as well. And then the shallower profile up here, again, a total of 20 blocks up from the floor. So the roof part itself, this part that I've just blocked in with the rough stone block, is a total of 12 blocks tall versus 20 blocks tall for this one. And then starting at the very top, it comes down by 3, over by 1, down by 2, over by 1, down by 2, and then 1, 1, 1, and then over by 2, down and over by 2. So those are the profiles there. They're just temporary in order to create a skeleton to then place these tarred shingle roof blocks around the entire edge of these profiles here. So that's the next step, is to entirely line the perimeter of the profiles. With this shallow one, I'm going to go all the way across to the end there. And then with the steep one, I'm going to come in and meet it up to the shallow one. A little bit hard to make sense of at the moment here, but you'll see as the build comes to life. And then I might also take the conifer wood block and just continue block by block, one little rim along the sides here, as well as along the sides here. So just to cover these fences here, you can kind of aim at the side and it'll snap in. Oops, there we go. So just all the way across there, rather than using the roof blocks there to cover the fences, and then the roof blocks will basically just go entirely over that. So we can do like 1, 2, and it'll just meet up over that. And then to get rid of these little textures if you don't want them, because they're a little distracting when building the roof, I can just go into my settings, display, and then voxel detail models, and we can just turn those off. And that'll make things a little bit easier to see when we build the roofs out. So I'm going to spend some time doing this. I also do have a lot of live streams and more detailed videos for building roofs, so that's why this isn't the most detailed tutorial here for this, but hopefully you get the point and you can at least follow along, and I will get back with you soon. Alright, I have now finished the wooden portion of the roof before we add straw over it, and I think this turned out really nice. I've deleted the stone templates on the ends and then just continued it out by a 2-block overlap on the ends of the roof there, and I think that looks great. So the next step is to fill in these ends, fill in these large gaps with the roof blocks. So I want to take the tarred shingle roof blocks and fill in all of this area here. And for the end of the steeper roof here, I've just left a large opening pretty much toward the bottom, just 2 blocks up from the bottom and 4 blocks wide for a larger window, and I'll adjust the exact size of it later on, but I really like the way that looks. And then for the smaller end caps of the smaller roof up here, I've just left a little opening toward the bottom there for some other windows. So that'll just add some light. I think that also looks really great from the outside. So the next step is to actually do the deck that will come off of this doorway right here. And for that, I'm going to take these ceiling blueprints out of the rough stone block just temporarily and snap 2 of them coming out of the house there. And that's going to act as a platform to then place these wall tapestry showcase pieces, which I think will actually make for a really cool deck. So with the fine rotation here, let's see, it looks like G in the scroll wheel. I'm going to flip them upside down, rotate them around, and with snapping turned on, we're going to place 2 pretty much on the outsides and then turn snapping off and free place 1 directly in the middle, right like that. Then I'm going to hit the undo button 2 times, get rid of the stone blueprints, and there we go. That looks like a really cool deck. It's a little thinner and nicer looking than doing it out of blocks. So now for the railing and supports of the deck, I'm going to turn snapping on and use these fence corners just like that. And then we can use the fences here. Something like that. Rotate it around. We could place 2 there and 1 more there. There we go. There's the fences. And I would have loved to use these big support struts to do these like pillars coming down from the deck like we did in front of the Hobbit hole there. But unfortunately, these are too tall and they'll stick down into the Hobbit hole. So I've come up with a plan B, which is to use these butter churns. And with snapping turned on, I'm going to flip these guys upside down. And then kind of aim at the bottom of the fence corner. And we can put a couple of these. So once we have 1 there, I'm going to now build up from the bottom here with the single block by 2 blocks, just like that. And with snapping on, place another 1. And then hit the undo button twice, just like that. And then go ahead and flip another 1 all the way around, upside down, with snapping on. And we can place it right there. And that's how I'll do the pillars here. That way they're not sticking down into the Hobbit hole, and those still look pretty nice. I'm very happy with how that is. So I just did the same thing to this side here, and there is our deck. And I think that looks quite nice. Very, very happy with that. Now, one last step before we do the thatch roof is to do the chimney. And I would like to do a chimney pretty much in the center of this wall right here. Now, I was doing a few chimney concepts, and I came up with this design here that I did sticking out of the top of the Hobbit hole. And I absolutely love how that looks with the smoke coming out, the little chimney cap. So I'm going to show you exactly how I did that on the house here. And for those of you also wondering, that chimney goes straight up from the center of this wall in the Hobbit hole. So it's basically just 2 blocks by 2 blocks, a little pillar that continues up directly in between the 2 floor blueprints here. But yeah, I really, really like the way that turned out. So without further ado, let's do it on the house here. So the first thing here is to come to the inside. I apologize, it's a little dark in here. Let me just put a little torch so you guys can see. And right in between these 2 floor blueprints, I want to cut out a 4 block wide opening. So I believe that's here and here. Let me just check that to be sure. Yep, that's directly in between these 2 floor blueprints. And I want it to be 4 blocks tall. And then I also want to cut it out another 2 blocks into the grass above the Hobbit hole there. Something just like that. And this is where we will continue our chimney up from, since the fireplace will probably be on this lower level here as part of a kitchen. It'll also make sense being right here because this is directly above the flame altar below it. So I don't know, if we wanted to get realistic, the flame altar could have a place to vent out the chimney up here too. So now with the rough flintstone blocks, what I want to do is start building this out. And I'm also going to take the larger flintstone here, and with snapping turned off, let's see here. Let's just place it on the ground and then one block out like that. There we go. And then a couple more. And let's see, maybe I want to continue it up to about here. That looks pretty good. And then place this all block by block across. Sorry for the contrasty lighting here. Yeah, something like that. That looks pretty good. And now just taking the flintstone block, but only making it 2 blocks wide instead of 4 blocks wide. And we'll continue this just all the way up through the roof of the house. So something just like that, and then it kind of tapers in there on the sides for the fireplace. We could even take some stone shingle roof blocks to make that little taper a little better there. But let's see, let me jump up here, make this a little easier. And I'll do that, and we can destroy these 2 roof blocks right there. Get up on the roof, and bring it up maybe to about there. That seems like a good height for the chimney. Now I'm going to take my refined stone block, and then we can add a little cap on it, just like that. And then I'm actually going to destroy this cap and 2 blocks below it. So basically a total of 3 blocks down, just with 2 clicks there. And we're gonna take some standing torches. Actually, I wanted 4 of them. So let me just grab the extra that I placed in here temporarily. And this is how we're going to get the smoke to come out the top. You could just use 1, but I found that 4 of them fits in here, and it actually makes for a bit more smoke. So let's add 1, and then just add them really tight together. 2, 3, and 4. Something like that. And now I'm going to hit the undo button twice. That brings our chimney cap back, and we've got a little bit of smoke coming out the top there, which looks quite good. Then we've got a fence corner, and this is step 1, which is to basically, with snapping off, use the fine rotate and flip this upside down. And then directly in the center of the chimney, gonna bring it up by 4 clicks and place it down. So something along those lines. Right there. That looks pretty good and very centered. And I'm also just going to create some scaffolding for myself so I can see a little bit better what I'm placing and what I'm doing here. So that's step 1. Then I'm going to take the carved limestone vase, and same thing, we are going to flip it upside down with the fine rotation. Want to just make sure it's really centered in there. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That looks about good. Something like that. Then I'm going to take the bowl here, and let's just reset the rotation there so that's facing upright. Then using Q and the scroll wheel, we're going to sit it down by basically 2 clicks. I'll go 3 just to kind of make sure it's centered, but by 2 clicks, and we'll place it about there. Just make sure that looks good from all angles. It's a little bit off center, so this could be a little bit finicky. Could also kind of do it from the top down here. This might be a little easier. There we go. That looks nice. That's good and centered. Now I'm going to take the plate, the scrap plate here, and then again with fine rotation, flip this guy upside down. And something just like that. Make sure it's centered on the chimney. That looks good. And then Q in the scroll wheel. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see it's red because I'm standing too close to it. So what I'm going to do is add another piece of scaffolding to look down at the top of it to make sure everything's centered. But this way it won't be red. So let's just flip it upside down all the way around. There we go. Making sure it's centered. And 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the last step is to take this little medium flask that we can craft at the carpenter, and we are going to basically set it right in the center of the top of the scrap plate there, and then move it down until it's just underneath the top. Something just like that. That creates a little center there, and there's our little chimney cap with some smoke coming out the top. You could even do 2 of these side by side. You could use this little fire bowl next to it to create like another little smokestack, or just add some fun interest depending on how large your chimney is. But so far, I think this just looks really, really great. We can destroy the blueprints over here. See how it looks from the bottom. It'll also look better once the thatch is on the roof, the Vuka nesting material, because the terrain will come up and kind of cover a bit of that chimney. So it might look a little tall at first, but that looks great. I love that little size for a chimney. I might make it a little wider or just the height later on, but that's a really great starting point. So now the next step is to cover the roof with the Vuka nesting material to create a thatch or straw roof, which I think will look really nice for this cottage. And for that, I'm going to do it very similar to how I have done all of my other mossy roofs and other terrain roofs in the past for my forest village projects. And I just think this will look pretty cool. This is actually the first time I'm using Vuka nesting material, so we'll see how it turns out. And this is the tedious part, it's just placing it block by block and being patient, covering the entire roof. And one tip to make this a lot easier is to go into the settings, display, and then for the small foliage, we're going to turn that all the way off, as well as voxel detail models, just to not confuse us. And that gets rid of all the little straw textures that poke out of it. Allows you to see if you've missed any spots or any of that. And it just makes it really easy to place this over the entire roof. So that's what I'm going to spend some time doing. And then I'll get back with you guys when that's finished. And it should start looking really, really good. Okay, here we go. I now have finished the roof, and I think it turned out really, really nice. Let me know what you guys think in the comments of using the Vuka nesting material for roofs. I think it looks pretty cool. Kind of contrasts the green in the forest. I've previously just done mossy roofs and things, but I think that looks really, really nice. It's a little fluffy and thick for how small the build is, but just kind of adds to the cozy feel of it. And then another thing I did is widen the chimney by 2 blocks. I just felt proportionally it looked better being 4 blocks wide instead of 2 blocks wide. And then I added a little tiny window on each side of it. Just trimmed them out with a few stone shingle roof blocks, as well as some of the windows there. So yeah, just adding a few little decorations and windows to the inside. We have a double window directly behind those 2 front windows there. And I'm thinking that the kitchen will actually go on this level right here, because we could have like a little island here and be able to walk out onto the deck, maybe have a little bit of seating out here. So that's kind of the plan so far. And then maybe like a little bedroom lounge area right up front here. Something along those lines. I just put 2 windows above the stair area here, and then a little tiny window at the top of each side of this little basement here of the hut. So this is where we have the front door to the house. And with that, I think the exterior of the house is actually looking quite good. I'm very happy with how that turned out. I also kind of flared out the tops of the roofs just a little bit with some of the Vuka nesting material, which I think looks nice rather than them being perfectly straight all the way up to the top. So yeah, that is a perfect little cozy fantasy cottage there. And the next step is to start working on the little tree over here. I've said big tree, now I'm saying little tree. I'm not sure how big it'll actually be. I think it'll kind of be like a wide trunk, maybe a little bit stubby with some foliage, and just kind of a cozy little planting thing that we could walk up on the inside of, have a little perch at the top, but that doesn't feel too crazy big or overpowering compared to the house. So I'm not entirely sure how it'll turn out just yet, but to get started, I'm going to grab a ceiling blueprint here, the 8 block by 8 block blueprint, and out of the conifer wood block with snapping turned on, we're just going to place it right there, which is directly in between these 2 floor blueprints outside of this opening, and that's just going to mark the center of where my tree trunk is going to be. And around this, I'm just going to take the terrain blocks, probably mostly using the cube, as well as this larger square terrain blueprint, using the Blackmire bark, and we can just start kind of outlining a bit of a circle around here. to begin with, and then I'll kind of plan how I want the inner staircase area to be later that kind of goes up through the trunk of the tree and how the roots will go and everything. So I'm just going to spend some time on this, building it up a bit. It's going to take a bit. Oops. I want the terrain blueprint. There we go. But yeah, just be patient with it. One cube and one block at a time, just kind of roughing it in, and we'll smooth it all out later. But I think that'll be nice. I think that'll kind of be the bottom diameter of the trunk. We'll just kind of continue it around here, kind of narrow it in a little bit, a few little fat branches coming off, and then some foliage hanging down from them. Maybe going for like a foresty willow tree look for this one. I think that's what we could do. All right, I've now finished the base of the tree here, and I think this looks pretty nice. Just started doing some little roots and things coming out. And then I've left a little 2-block wide opening right here that's at the same level as the roof of the Hobbit hole. So 8 blocks up from the floor of the Hobbit hole here. And then in the middle of this little stump here, I've left a 6-block by 6-block opening. So if I go to my single block here, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 by 6. And then I've left these little step pieces in here with some conifer wood. It doesn't matter because these will be deleted later. These are just a blueprint or outline to build a little winding staircase to go from the floor of the Hobbit hole here up and around and then out this little opening into the yard of the house up here, which I thought would be really cool. So for that, this very edge piece I've dug down by 1 block. So 1 block by 2 blocks, left this all the same. And then not the very edge, but one over. It's just up in 2 blocks and then up in another 2 blocks. And then same thing, basically repeating up to here. And these will be the outlines for placing these rustic tables that will actually make up the stairs. So first I'm going to take a rustic table and then place it, kind of snapping it down onto that block down there. And one thing to keep in mind actually is we'll want to place conifer wood over that and then destroy them. That's the last step you want to do, because we can place that and then just hit the undo button twice, and that brings the floor back underneath it. And then we'll take another one and place it right there, and then take another one and rotate it around. I'm kind of having the 2 lumpy edges in the front, and we'll just place it on top of here, and we'll deal with these little corner sections later on. So I'm just snapping them now in the middle of each of the sides. So we'll do another one there, and then up here, rotate it around, and another one right there, just like that. So we now have one snapped in the middle of each of these side pieces, and then we'll take a few more to do the corners. So maybe starting with the top, since that's the last one I placed, I'm going to rotate it by 3, holding R in the scroll wheel. So 1, 2, 3. That's going to bring it kind of at a 45-degree angle. And then I'm going to rotate another 3. 1, 2, 3. And another 3. So 1, 2, 3. And then snap it right over there on that piece. And same thing for the one down here. So basically a total of 6 rotations from the last one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And snap it right like so. So that is our little windy staircase. Maybe it seemed a little confusing, but I'm sure you'll get the hang of it if you practice a little bit. And then we can destroy all of our little blueprint blocks down here. Let's see if I can get to them all. Looks like that'll work. So there is our little windy staircase. I might even put like a little secret door here, and then we just wind up and around, and we can go out our little 2-block opening there. So that looks pretty cool. And then we have a total of 2 blocks by 2 blocks in the center here, that if I wanted to, I could take the terrain blueprint with some of the Blackmire heartwood here, and we could do a little pillar up the center here, which I think could be kind of cool to wind around with the staircase. And then we could even take the single terrain block here with the heartwood and maybe even just blend that pillar into the stairs. If I could kind of mesh it in like that with a little bit of heartwood, just to make things kind of cozy. We could even destroy some of the ground blocks. and place the heartwood there instead. And yeah, just make a really cool little staircase and feel like you're inside the tree up here to wind up and around. So now that we have that staircase, I could continue that exact staircase all the way up to the top of the tree if I really wanted to, or put like a little ladder that continues up in the center here. So we'll see what I end up wanting to do. But for now, I'm just going to continue the stump and the tree portion of the build with the Blackmire bark, just going a little bit higher with it. I also want to taper in just a little bit to narrow it down a bit. And then we only have the limitations of a level 1 flame altar for this build. So it will not be any taller than the roof of the house, than the top of the roof, because that's at the very top of the flame altar. And so we'll have to kind of keep that in mind when planning our little branches and everything. And after a bit of work, here is what I've come up with. I kept it pretty stumpy rather than building it out as a large tree, thinking that maybe the stump portion of it could be like an old growth leftover of one of these larger Blackmire trees. And technically, if it was all hollowed out like this, it would be kind of dead. So maybe it's like an old growth dead stump with a few shoots kind of coming out of it that want to grow. And that's what I'm going to emphasize here, because I felt like with the width that the stump had to be in order to fit a little staircase inside of it like I did, I just felt that proportionally it wouldn't quite work to build it super tall or have a big tree here. I felt like it maybe would just overpower the cottage a little bit and not quite fit into the environment here. So I thought that this is kind of the perfect size. I really, really like how that turned out. Just kind of not really any plan to it. Just built the stump up, kept some portions hollow, mixed in a little bit of the heartwood, and just kind of took the block and block by block, built out some little branches and twigs and things. And then I also got carried away and did a little rope swing that hangs down from this branch. Thought that could be pretty cool with some of the windows and item frames and the chains there. And if you like anything in this build, as well as interior decoration stuff and whatnot when I do the full showcase, then do let me know and I'll consider doing some tutorials specifically for them if there's enough interest. But yeah, with that said, I think this little stump tree is pretty cool looking. I also have a little grapple point up here and a little hangout area up top with a little chair, just to enjoy some of the forest ambience. So with that, one more thing I want to do to this also is just take my foliage as well as the flower soil and kind of create some little branches or foliage coming down from it, kind of like I was testing out on the backside here. So literally just kind of coming out by like 1 block and then, or 2 blocks, and then maybe coming down a little bit. Maybe also putting the flower soil at the bottom just to make it a little bit narrower. I think that looks pretty cool every now and then, just to kind of droop some moss and foliage over it, make it look a little older, like an ancient little tree here. So I'll spend a little bit of time doing that, and then it will be time for some interior decoration and a little bit of landscaping. And I won't be showing too much of the decorating on camera here since this video is already pretty long. But as I said, if anything interests you, then do be sure to comment below and I'll consider doing a tutorial on it. And I also have a few more videos on my channel with some more interior decoration and whatnot. But I'd like to do more at some point because it is kind of fun. It just makes for really long videos if I include it all in these longer build videos. But I will leave this world available to download for bronze members on YouTube and Patreon. If you're interested, you can just join that membership, and then the build will be available to download in my Discord server. Alright, I am now finished with the build, and I am really happy with how it turned out. So without further ado, let me take you on a full tour and walkthrough of it. Starting with the exterior here, which I know you've seen a lot of by now, but I've added a few little bushes and plantings here and there. And we also have a bit of leftover room within this level 1 flame altar. So if you were using this as your full-time base, you could have room to add a little animal pen or other little details, which is really nice. So if we walk around this way, I have the little hanging swing, which I love, as well as some little lanterns hanging from the tree. And then all the way around, that's kind of what the little window looks like poking out of the Hobbit hole there. I've just got a little water well out back because why not? Fits nicely in that space. And the back of the build is a little less interesting. I've mostly just kept the trees here to make it cozy and kind of outline it along the back there. And then we head around this way, and that is the whole exterior of the build there. And I also built this little staircase out of the stone coffin lids. I flipped them upside down and then just rotated them around, and I think that looks super cool for a little stairway into the front door of the cottage. And that has some little candles alongside it to light the pathway at night. And then up here is kind of the front yard of the build. And again, if this was more of a full-time base, you could replace some of the moss and grass up here with some rows of farm soil and be able to plant a little garden up here or do anything you'd like with this space. I've just left it fairly simple for now. But then from here, we walk down into the little tree or stump, and I love this little spot up top as well. Sometimes if I'm not far enough back, bonks my head on that little area when getting up. There we go. It's kind of a small hole, but I didn't have a lot of space to work with. So yeah, just a peaceful little spot to hang out at there. And then we continue down the stairs into the tree. And this is kind of the secret entrance into the Hobbit hole, or out of it, depending on what you'd like. So now we are in the Hobbit hole. I decided to put a little bookshelf door there, which I thought looked pretty cool. There is the front entry to the Hobbit hole, the doorway there. And basically, if you're coming in the front entry, to the right here is a nice little planting area with some seed beds, little couch, kind of the living room of the Hobbit hole. And then to the left over here is the kitchen. I've just used the conifer wood for a lot of the furniture in this build. I think it looks really, really nice. And I've lined up a bunch of the little dressers from the conifer wood all together to create a countertop and back some chests into it. I've got the little fireplace and some food storage right over here. So I think it turned out really, really nicely. And I also love the little chain lamp design that I have with the upside down plates and candles here for the lights over the little island here. And maybe I'll do a video at some point of kitchen decorating ideas. I feel like a lot of my creativity comes with kitchens and bathrooms and some of the finer detail there. Yeah, I've just replaced a few of the blocks with the palm wood block here to create this little checkered floor in the middle, just to add some fun interest there. And then phased up some of the little window pieces up in the ceiling just to, yeah, add some detail, some texture. So heading off to the left here through this door, this is the hallway. And if we continue to the left here, we have the smaller bedroom with just a single little bed there, little working area, study area, and then a small closet with an armor stand and a chest, which is all I guess you really need. Figured it would be cool to include a little closet there. And if we head to the right off the hallway, I just have another little hallway here. Maybe a little table, a little picture. Nothing too fancy in here just yet. I just wanted the feeling of having these little hallways because it kind of makes it feel cozy in the Hobbit hole. But we go through this door, and I have the larger master bedroom, which I think looks really, really nice. It's kind of a mirror image of the smaller bedroom, except for a bit more space. So we have a larger bookshelf there, and a bigger study area, a double bed here. And I kind of like the little leather bags at the foot of the bed, kind of as chests, maybe for extra blankets or things along those lines. Another little closet, basically mirroring the first one. And then this is basically another entry into this bedroom, if you just head right onto here. And then in the very back here, we have the bathroom. So I've just phased some of the glowing block into the roof there to make it look like a little light or a skylight or something over the sink. And then a rotated shield wall emblem for the little mirror behind the sink there. I love that. That was something we figured out on my mountain cabin build for the interior in those live streams. And then I've got a tub and shower combo right over here in the corner, which I thought fit there quite nicely. And then a little divider and the little toilet with a little wooden cup as the toilet paper roll. So lots of little details and fun stuff there. It's actually a pretty good sized bathroom. And if we head all the way back here, basically just continuing straight through the hall from the kitchen, to the right here, I have some extra storage with magic chests. So this could kind of be the storage of the build. Those fit there quite nicely. A large painting and some little secret storage behind the stairs. And if you also wanted to get fancy, you could put more stairs going down from these ones and go into a basement, because this build would have room for a basement if you wanted to fit more craft stations or NPCs, things like that. But anyway, we head up these stairs, which connects the Hobbit hole to the cottage. This is the front door of the cottage, coming up from those little steps down there. And I have a little entry, again with just a little leather chest there, little bench to take off your shoes, maybe a wine barrel. And then over here is the living room of the cottage. Some cozy sofas, the fire here, and a coffin lid for the fire hearth there, which I thought just looked a little nicer in the space than the default hearth. So yeah, this is a cozy little area. Then we head up these stairs, and this is kind of the main level of the cottage. I decided to keep it a fairly open floor plan up here, with a small little bedroom or hangout area here, which I thought could be kind of cozy to add with some of the wall dividers. And then I did some beams on the ceiling here, as you can see, with the roof block. But if you didn't want the high ceiling with beams, you could continue another staircase above this one and actually have an additional level and a loft up there to fit more bedrooms if you'd like. So super customizable build, which I really, really love. This is honestly one of my favorite builds and favorite designs for something small. But over here is the kitchen, which is a little larger. Got the little wine barrel for drinks and some upper cabinets, as well as the counters, the sink. I love the little range hood over the stove, which I just have some of the luminescent block behind it to just add some little light there. And then to get rid of the textures that might form on the range hood or the wood beams for the roof there, you can actually use the decay tool on them, and that gets rid of any of the roof block textures that you might not like that poke through. So yeah, super nice little kitchen. Love how it turned out. Just got some food storage there, some little plates and things. And then if you want, you can open it up onto the deck where I've just got some more little chairs, another little table for some seating. So very open, very cozy design. And this double window in the back as well, I created the double window here and left empty space behind here because you could have another door that goes out onto a big back deck, which you actually do have room for, and I was thinking about doing that, but I decided to keep it simple for the time being. You could even connect this deck with a back deck there and get really creative and customize this build to your liking. So with that said, I do hope you enjoyed this video. It was a ton of fun to do, and like I said, it was one of my favorite small builds on this channel so far. And like I said earlier, you can download it as a bronze member on Patreon or YouTube. And without further ado, be sure to subscribe, join the Discord through the link in the description, and I will see you next time. Cheers.